Hello, welcome to another edition of the Go Long Show. I am here with Sonni Abata, and her background is fascinating to me. And I found her on Instagram and I started following her through a mutual connection. And she used to be a newscaster. Maybe she's still a newscaster, but in a different way. And we're going to hear all about that. She's a mom, wife, journalist. But what I love about her is that she has this podcast called We Gotta Talk. And I love it that it's gotta as opposed to do. And a lot of her content is around bringing people together and trying to find where we agree as opposed to where we disagree, which I think a lot of our news media focuses on. So we're going to cover a bunch of different topics in terms of her pivot and how she manages certain things. So Sonni, welcome to the show.
Jill, it is so great to talk with you. I really have enjoyed getting to know you on social media and following your stuff and Substack as well. So thank you for having me. This is truly an honor.
Thanks. So let's talk about, you were in journalism and very high pressure, high stakes, lots of focus on how you look and maybe not as much as the substance of what you say. And how did you, let's talk about how did you handle all of that?
Oh gosh, Jill, I love you for getting right into the meat of the issues right off the top. Okay, so yeah, I spent 15 years working in traditional media. I was a local news anchor and reporter, and local news, I believe, is the only true remaining form of pure journalism out there. So I'm a big fan. Support your local stations and your local reporters because that's the kind of reporting we need. But anyhow, yeah, I started, it was interesting, very young. I had been working in college. I'm from Pittsburgh originally. I went to Carnegie Mellon University, and we did not have a journalism program, but I knew that I liked writing, storytelling, and I was a drama I guess you could, it wasn't a minor, it was like a dual focus in my major as well. And so I have an appreciation for the flair of storytelling, but mostly an appreciation for delivering the facts. I was always the one growing up who would gather up all the information and be like, run from the kid table to the adult table and be like, okay, this is what they're saying. I really have just had a knack for communication forever. And I was a true mediator in a lot of ways my whole life. So journalism was a great fit. I found a way to use an amazing interdisciplinary school we had at Carnegie Mellon to pursue this degree. But mainly I did a lot of my work because there wasn't a journalism school through internships, free work. I mean, like wrote for an online magazine, interned at Dateline in New York City, interned at two local news stations, had a job at the local Fox Sports Net, which was, in that time, focusing on it purely sports programming, but at the very local level. So I had my own high school sports show. I had my own show that focused on getting to know some of the Steelers and Pirates and Penguins, which are the Pittsburgh teams, off the field. It was kind of like a fun get to know you lifestyle combination. So I was working in the field as a 19-year-old. So I had 2 years in college when I was working with this production company to put these shows on Fox Sports Net. I was writing for everything. I was getting my hands into the world of journalism through internships and work long before I graduated. And because I had some of that experience and a lot of on-camera experience, I also did live sideline reporting for a minor league baseball team. I was in it. When I'm in something, I'm like full in. So I wasn't out. I mean, I had fun in college, but I was really, really nose to the grindstone. So as a result, I was able immediately upon graduation, through a lot of the work I had done through internships and the connections I made, to immediately get a job. So at 21, I graduated Carnegie Mellon in Pittsburgh. I had a job at the CBS affiliate and I started working within 2 years. And, typically it's more normal now in this day and age as media has digitized to see a lot of young journalists early on, but that's really not how it was back then. This was pre-streaming. I mean, the web was a thing, but there was no live video stream. There was barely any updated like copy on local news websites. There weren't even like stories being typed up and put online. Like it was pre-digital in every way. Facebook wasn't even a thing when I graduated. So I went into a very old traditional media world at a very young age. And I was very grateful and had amazing mentors that really helped me learn the art of storytelling and fact gathering, and especially reporting when you're knocking on people's doors. I mean, it's not just, people have this idea of like TV where you just like go out and talk to a couple of people. Like you're chasing things down. A lot of really, really good journalism happens at that level. So thankfully I had great mentors, But I was also really green in a lot of ways. And you know how when you're young, you think, oh, I'm good. I'm such a grown up. Now I look back and I'm like, I really was a baby. But I had the help of these mentors and I got into this and I probably was a little more idealistic at that age. And I definitely had a thing where I came up against a little bit of doubt. There was doubt in my abilities because of how I looked. I mean, I make no shame about being a girly girl. I'm sitting in my closet right now. If you're watching on video, I'm surrounded by all my makeup products. I mean, I think you can, it's a both and situation. I will tell my daughters this too. You can be appreciative of, fashion and like the superficial things in life and really like taking care of yourself on the outside and be a really intelligent, really, really driven woman. So I was like, I just didn't anticipate being underestimated a lot. And I think I had multiple experiences and where I was reported for clothing, like because I wore a color pants that a woman in the office didn't like and she thought it was inappropriate. And then another woman really, this is what breaks my heart, who worked at the TV station. We were at an offsite birthday party celebrating someone. I had just started the TV station and she said, no one will ever take you seriously wearing clothes like that. And so anyway, the point is, yes, there was some of that early on. And it's something I think women generally deal with, just being judged for different things. But I took it in stride. Listen, at the end of the day, it was an amazing opportunity. And I find a way to pull the good out. And it was a mostly amazing, amazing opportunity. But there are so many shades of that in journalism, or at least back then, that, I look back now and I'm like, oh, poor Sonni, poor baby Sonni.
Well, it's so there's a few things in there, but what I want to focus on is that I'm sure a lot of people thought that you were lucky. And they don't realize that luck in most cases is about putting yourself in a position to be lucky. And so I'm sure
Yes.
you encountered that kind of criticism and feedback where it's like, oh, well, Sonni got lucky that, she was able to interview so-and-so. But what they don't know, and I talk a lot about this with my clients, is that it's doing the day in and day out, and you have to love the grind of
Yes.
what you do. It can't just be about crossing the finish line. So for you, getting that like major story over the finish line or interviewing, the quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers, right? There's a lot of the grind that goes into getting over the finish line and having that
Yes.
celebratory fist pump moment. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely. And even at that point in my career, no one had known the hundreds of hours of free labor I put in. Everything that was given to me, I did with a smile, whether it was getting coffee, writing scripts, running copy from the studio I did everything. I was grateful for the opportunity. I didn't come from people look at, women, they're like, must be nice. You just trade on your looks. I didn't come from a family that was some legacy, I was the second person in my family to go to college. I mean, we're Italian American, like my grandfather went to sixth grade. That was it. And every opportunity to advance beyond that was a blessing for our family. So the only thing that was drilled into my head was hard work and an appreciation for opportunity. So I do think I was really unfairly judged, probably for maybe my bubbly personality or the way I carried myself or dressed. And I like to be fashionable. But I try to look beyond that and focus on the opportunity, because if I looked at the way people viewed me rather than who I know myself to be, a hard worker, like I said, who had put in hundreds of hours of free labor, I would be drowning in other people's negativity. And I just can't do that, but it is kind of like everybody's got their thoughts. That's for sure.
Everyone's got their thoughts. All right. That's going to be the tagline for this episode. Got their thoughts, because I always say people are going to people.
Oh my God, I love that. Yes, it's true. And like we really can't, TV probably taught me very early on to not make other people's expectations or opinions my own, and forming that line of delineation of who I know myself to be and who other people may think. And you probably see this on social media now too, with the way you promote yourself. We're all out there and
Right.
People will look at your content, I'm sure, Jill, and be like, oh, I know her. I know that type. And you're like, you have no idea, but that's okay. You can think you do. And
Right.
it does learning that how to put up that protection around our souls and our heart is very important, but it is a learned skill.
So I was off of social media for 7 years before I started Go Long. And
Wow.
but
That was
you're in like
probably amazing.
it was. And but the thing is that when you're doing a business to consumer business and you're
Mhm.
targeting the demographics that we're targeting, you
Mhm.
have to be on social. And
Yeah.
which is how, I found Lindsay and how I got connected to you and everything.
Mhm.
And to me, a lot of what I do is dispelling the myths and the bullshit out there. And
Mhm.
there is so much out there in terms of like exercise influencers, in terms of diet influencers, and all these things. And the red flag I always say is that anyone who guarantees a result, you should run the other way. Like there
Oh,
should,
that's interesting.
because if they're sitting there saying that you're going to lose 15 pounds
Mhm.
in, 12 weeks, you don't know what, like, you're going to do all sorts of contortions
Right.
to make that happen. And you don't know what the coach is going to do
Mhm.
to make sure that they live up to that obligation.
Mhm.
Right. And so it's a matter of telling people that, look, I'm not saying it can't happen, but you don't want
Right.
to put yourself in a position where you're optimizing for one successful outcome. You're trying to get multiple successful outcomes, like parallel metrics, so to speak, if that makes sense.
Sure. And I would imagine too, a lot of the work you do has to do with teaching people self-motivation and self-reliance. I mean, so yes, to have the end goal of whatever, building more muscle or losing X amount of pounds, but the lesson really is in the journey of how you learn how to take care of yourself so that when you don't have that accountability in your face every day, you can still maintain that lifestyle. And I think that sounds to me like the lesson of what you're teaching people.
What I like to tell people is not even like losing weight. It's around, how do you want to move? So my journey
Mm,
started. So when you're talking about whether you know me or not, so I used to be 20 years ago, I was a very unhealthy person. I did not take care of myself. And recently, about a month ago, I posted the before pictures. And it was, you have to find them. It was
God.
really, really scary for me to do that, because
Yeah.
most of the people in my life now know me as the person who gets up early to work out and is pretty fastidious about certain things. I mean, I just had a girls' weekend in Whistler, and my friends kidnapped me for my birthday a few weeks ago, and the next morning wasn't so great. But they all were not in good shape the next day as well. So success. And but the thing is that it's very much around, like, exercise and movement is very much a part of my life now.
Mhm.
Whereas
Mhm.
20 years ago, it wasn't. And I have like the 3 autoimmune diseases and all that stuff. But they don't see the work that goes into it. And so, what I try and tell clients is that, look, it's not going to be a linear journey. And that's where those guarantees come in, is that they promise you're going to have this linear journey and you're going to make mistakes all along the way.
Mhm.
But how my thing started is that I read the South Beach diet, which sounds like a
Ugh.
gimmick. But here's the thing. It was started by a cardiologist in South Beach. And his thing was, he saw a lot of skinny fat people.
Mhm.
And which meant that they looked good, but they weren't healthy. And his mindset was, if you focus on losing weight, you're not necessarily going to be healthy. At least this is how I interpreted it. But if you focus on being heart healthy, then the other stuff will follow.
Right.
And that's what I try. And so I'm like, I like that. That resonates with me, because being
Mhm.
heart healthy, because my family has a history of cardiac issues, so that resonated with me.
Mhm.
But that's what I try and take with my clients, is that if you move well, the other stuff will happen. But if you focus on losing weight, you're not necessarily going to move well, especially as you get older.
Right.
And I know, you just talked to, I think, a neurologist recently about like
Mhm.
important tests to get. So I guess when you're thinking about your lifestyle brand, how are you trying to? Because you seem like also a dispel the bullshit type of person.
Yeah, I would like to think so. The idea of what you're doing and mine, what I'm trying to do, kind of they align. I mean, right, inspiring people to be critical of the ways, in my case, that they get their news and consume media and open their circle of friends and contacts to understand different perspectives and different points of view. And it's kind of like the top-down approach I feel like you're doing too. There's a level of empowerment there. We are bombarded, in your case, with health information, or in my case with news stories. And what I'm trying to do on my page is present things that are happening. And I'm only one person, so unfortunately I can only kind of do one thing at a time, but present things that are happening in the world, or in the health space, or even in the beauty space. I cover a lot of things that are happening in aesthetics, because that's just a fun, lighthearted thing to me, and teach people, or help people look at things in a different perspective. And I always say on my feed, and I have covered it all. I have any third rail issue you can think of, I have done. We have had conversations on gun rights, on the Middle East, on abortion rights. I did a whole series on the overturning of Roe v. Wade. I mean, like, I've hit it all. You can't, religion, there is no topic left untouched. And I always tell my listeners, or anyone who is on social media, I'm not trying to change your mind. You have, chances are, gotten to your point of view from a set of experiences or beliefs that are dear to you. Respect that. But let's just hear it. And let's, instead of focusing on all the ways, and this is the Libra in me coming out, that we are different, let us try to find a point of connection. So even on the hottest of hot topics, or the most difficult of topics, to see that ideological opponent as a human, and just maybe try to find, you may not find anything. You may still, listen, for me, there are issues that I'm like, I don't budge on, but that doesn't mean I don't pursue the opposing opinion, or actively pursue. I just spent 45 minutes listening to a YouTube interview with someone, and it made me cringe a little bit hearing some of these people talking. I'm like, you really think that? But I forced myself.
Right.
It's exposure therapy for opinions. And it teaches you it teaches you restraint, respect for people that don't agree with you. And it most importantly teaches you ways to navigate through the world where obviously you're not going to agree with everyone all the time. So it's a life skill of just sort of navigating conflict that I think is important. So I don't know. I say this stuff and I feel like I should be a therapist sometimes, but it's like a combination of therapy and news, what I do.
Well, I think that the news is so polarizing that it necessitates therapy. I think it's kind of this like
Yeah.
circle that it just, you're on
Right.
it and you're just like dopamine, 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 dopamine. And so I think that in itself may lead
Yes.
to needing therapy. But what's interesting is that, first of all, you were in Pittsburgh, and I imagine, if my math is right, you were probably covering news during a very crazy story in 2011, the Jerry Sandusky.
Oh my
Um,
gosh. Jerry Sandusky, the Penn State coach.
yeah, the
Yes.
Penn State coach. And
Oh.
that was a very polarizing story because of how many people looked up to Joe Paterno
Hmm.
and everything else. And so maybe I think that's just a very visceral example of like, how did you cover something like that where people are very much like Joe was God? And then there are
Yeah.
people like, no, what happened here was absolutely awful. And like he knew. And how did you deal with that?
Oh my gosh, I've done that. I was in Florida for the Casey Anthony trial and the George
Right.
Zimmerman trial. He's the man who shot Trayvon Martin. I've interviewed presidential candidates. I mean, like, I've been shaken down by Secret Service to do the interview. Like, yes, I have, and especially in those higher profile trial cases, like you just
Mhm.
said, Jerry Sandusky, or here down in Orlando when we were covering the Casey Anthony trial, we were on set for straight 6 hours at a time. I mean, at least. I mean, it would be, you get a bathroom break,
Yeah.
but it's like court TV. You have your earpiece in, you have your two experts in studio, you listen in live. As soon as there's a break in trial, you go over to your experts, you fill. You're talking for hours and listening for hours on end to these really, really difficult things. And, I don't know. This is probably why I'm in therapy right now, Jill.
Hey, we're
I
all
look,
in therapy
I
and
love therapy. I'm such an
just
advocate.
lean into it. Lean
What,
into
yes, but there is that desire to lean in to even the most uncomfortable of conversations is really um who I am. And I don't think you grow without understanding things and processing. And now, of course, there's a fine line between how much is too much. I always encourage people who are news consumers, so most of us, to be deliberate about the ways you take in your media. If you're watching one side, make sure you watch, if you're watching Fox, make sure you flip over to CNN. If you're a CNN or MSNBC person, flip over. It's going to pain you. It's going to hurt you to change the station and watch a different. But you know what? You gain by doing that and understanding that the whole world doesn't agree with you. This is like core to who I am too. And I think I go back to how I was raised, which was it's not about you, Sonny. It's not about, I mean, we love you and we want to, but there is a world out there with, my dad would say, when you leave this house, you can find anything you want outside of that door. I'm not at the center. My opinion, I don't think is better than anyone's or more. And I think holding that humility at the center of what I do has been really important because news has become ideological. It's become much more editorial. It's become much more opinion driven. And so as a consumer, you got to realize what you're getting. These aren't the Walter Cronkite days anymore. Not to say there aren't excellent journalists. And in fact, I think the digital era in journalism is proving to produce some really fantastic people and products. But you need to be a smart consumer. And if all you're going to do is watch cable, make sure you're at least challenging your own thoughts by watching the other side. Limit your consumption. When you start to feel your heart rate go up and you're scrolling through social media is the worst. I mean, those reels are designed to just grab you because they're so hot take.
Yeah.
So take a break.
And
when
the
you
algorithms
notice.
favor the hot takes as well. So
The algorithm, yes.
so there's that underlying factor as well, right?
Absolutely. I did a reel a few weeks back on the Blake Lively interview where she was seen kind
Well,
of
yeah, I asked you about that, and I'm like, what
being
is
snarky. And it was like the most lukewarm of hot takes. I was not criticizing her. I was not criticizing the journalist. My whole angle was, hey, I was a reporter for X number of years. Here's a reporter's take on what happened in that interview. And I think I said something like, on the reporter's side, there's pressure from the manager to get that soundbite that hasn't been gotten, or to make that person comfortable and get a good article, get a good interview, get good video, get good sound. And on the other side, you have a star who's, probably feeling tired and she's pregnant and she's probably feeling vulnerable. And I literally presented both sides. And I will tell you, Jill, 95% of the people didn't watch the whole thing. All they heard was what the one side they wanted. They believed that I supported. I was like, did you watch the video? I very clearly was like, on one hand, and on the other hand, no one wants nuance on social media. So just know that if you're getting your news there, the algorithm, like you said, will favor a hot take.
Yeah.
That was a more viral for me type of thing. And it wasn't even a hot take. I can't imagine if I went in hard and but just know that where you're getting your news matters. And if it's mainly on social media, fine. If that's all you want to do, there are responsible and respectable outlets on there as well. But just understand that the world you're playing in, which is, it's not news. It's
well, maybe we could put in the
media.
show notes some of the more what I will call sober people that you follow that
I will
call balls and strikes.
Yes.
And I think of that nature because to me, I think that, you talked about the lack of nuance, and I call it like just sober journalism, where it's just, I want the facts. I don't want like the whitewashing, the sane washing, whatever the hell they're calling it now. I don't want that. I just want to know, what did this person say with the context? Right. That's what I'm looking for. The problem is that everything is about hot takes and clips. And so you don't have context around when someone says something and then all of a sudden it goes viral and it's like, Trump said this, Kamala said this, JD said this, Tim said this, and it just goes on and on. And it's not helpful for society. So one last thing on kind of the news aspect of this is that I have to think that, you talked, a bit about your looks earlier and everything, that there had to be a fair amount of misogyny in the news world. And you even talked about like sometimes like there's not even misogyny from just men, but there's misogyny from women. And I encountered that in my career in both working for an investment bank and in tech. If anything, some of my like most fiercest issues were with women. I was like, what the fuck is actually happening here? So I'd love to hear a little bit more that you talked about where women were like, oh, no one's going to take you seriously. Instead of where they could have advocated for you, they chose to like punch down.
That's a really great way of putting it. I'm taking a moment to speak diplomatically here because
Mhm.
I don't I don't want to I view my life experiences through a different lens now that I'm a mother of older children, not older, but not babies, 11, 9, and 7. And I just want to try to speak. I want to try to understand where they were coming from before I come from a place of judgment. I will agree that there is a strange level of static and friction that women can get from other women in the workplace. And to me, that's a symptom, unfortunately, of a greater world that a problem that where women have been pitted against each other. It's and told there's only room for one. You're the woman hire. You're the beep beep beep. And I think thankfully some of that is phasing out. And I hope that with the next few generations of women in the workplace and even men, I have a son too, who I tell him the same things, even though he's, growing up with a different life experience, but just so he's aware of how women and girls experience the world. I had a conversation with him about this literally last week. I was like, you have to understand when you do this, this is what a girl hears, when you say this, whatever. But all of that to say, it's unfortunate that we've been put in that position. And I know the only thing that I can do is flip it on its head for the next group who's coming up under me or below me. So when I was given the opportunity, which I was thankfully, to have, younger women shadow me as college or high school students or interns, I gave them my time and attention and my heart, and I was kind. And rather than say, no one's going to take you seriously in that outfit, not that I ever had this conversation about their wardrobe, but if I were to, I would say something like, listen, you got to dress differently in the professional newsroom than you do in college. So this is not a knock, but next time you come in, make sure you don't wear jeans or make sure your skirt is longer. And I know it sounds stupid, but listen, there is a level of decorum and professionalism that has to exist in the world. I do think we've come a long way and in as much as how we are able to present ourselves, and I'm grateful for that. But there will always be, I believe, a level of decorum that needs to be respected in a workplace. So were I to ever have that conversation, which I didn't with a younger person, I would do it more delicately and understand that the person hearing that is going to interpret it as criticism if you're not really, really deliberate with how you word it. So, I can look at these unfortunate experiences and say they suck, which they did, but I do try to be deliberate in every interaction I have to flip that narrative on its head and be the person who's welcoming and understanding and who recognizes these young women coming up in my industry. You can have it all. I want them to be beautiful and intelligent and have opportunities and be able to feel the best about who they are coming into this and not feel like they're being judged all the time,
Well, it's really that second to last point, like that they feel beautiful, however they define
Right.
beauty. But I think the other thing is that what you're also trying to convey is that there's a reality. And
Right.
so the thing is that like it or not, that you might be judged on wearing a pair of red pants
Mm-hmm.
and a guy can wear a red tie and that's totally okay. It just doesn't matter. The thing
It's
is
just,
that
yeah.
is this what you want people to knit you on? Or
Mm,
is this like, do you really want to
right.
die on this hill? And that's, the one thing, if I could go back 30 years
Mm-hmm.
and say, not everything is worth dying. You talked about being idealistic.
Mm-hmm.
Is this worth dying on the hill for?
Oh my
Right.
gosh, Jill, that is so well put. Yes.
And
Yes. I mean, and listen, in this conversation in particular, I don't know, style is a personal thing. I have friends who are very flamboyant in media, in the way that they show up in their wardrobe and appearance on camera. And I have more conservative friends who are more buttoned up. And listen, you got to pick who you are, right? At the end of the day, how you show up in the world is your choice. But it would be naive of me, it would be disingenuous of me to say how you show up in the world doesn't impact how people perceive you. So yes, lean into whoever you are, but understand that in the imperfect world we live in, and I experienced this and you did too. I probably was wearing stuff that was like, don't wear your, I don't know, whatever, like college cutoff jean shorts to, sometimes you need a little
don't wear those to the
guidance.
company picnic.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Like you look like a 12-year-old, like trying to, it's just, it's such a fine line. And on that issue in particular, I encourage women to, I mean, your gut is always is usually right. So follow that. And if you, however you feel best, you should show up in the world. But I also think that in a professional setting, and I know professional settings are like they're rapidly disappearing with a lot of work from home style
Yeah.
work. But, it's also okay that there are rules. And sometimes those rules, this is like my parents coming through,
Yeah.
it's, you just got to follow the rule. Like sometimes there's just a level of expectation and you just got to rise to it. And that's okay too.
Well, I actually have friends who have kids in private schools with uniforms, and they're just like, you
Mhm.
know what? It's just easier.
It
And
is.
for the kids, even though the kids complain about it, it's just easier because they don't have that peer pressure
Mhm.
of having to look a certain way because
Right.
there's uniform
And
that
you know what? It teaches them sometimes there's something bigger than you in the world, right? It's not just about, I love that kids want to express themselves. And I did as well growing up through fashion. I was a public school kid, but
right.
so I didn't have that, but that's great. But also there are things that are bigger than you. And if there's one thing that I do worry about with younger generations is that they think that it's all their point of view or their life. Sometimes there's bigger things than you, and there's a level of order and decency or something that the institution you chose to be a part of wants to uphold. So you want to play, you got to play by the rules, kind of. So it's a fine line of self-expression and being proud of who we are, which I would never discourage, but also learning to operate in a system where there are greater goals at play.
So
Wait, can I tell you a funny
yeah,
story?
go
This is
ahead.
like so
Yeah,
perfect regarding
yeah.
this exact thing. My son is in sixth grade. He's doing cotillion this year. It's a Southern thing. I don't know much. I'm a Pittsburgh girl at heart. But I'm like cotillion. It's like basically, and please forgive me if anyone listening who knows about this, you know, if I'm wrong. But basically it's like manners camp. It's like manners 101 for young men and young women. And so as part of this, the young boys show up in a jacket and tie and pants or khakis and nice shoes, and the girls show up in like a longer dress, and there are very specific rules. So parents have to volunteer a cotillion for one of these meetings. My son had his first one. I thought I was being real slick. I was like, I'm going to volunteer at the first one with all my girlfriends. We're going to get it out of the way. It'll be fun. We'll hang out. We'll watch the kids, do their thing.
Oh
And
God.
so I show up. I thought I looked good, Jill, but apparently I'm still the 21-year-old like news reporter trainee. I had a pair of like khaki slack shorts on. So like a pleated short, mid-length. They were not short. I had a shirt underneath and a cardigan on top and a low heel, and my hair was pulled back. And I said, I just felt so fancy. I mean, for a sweatpants girl, I'm like wearing that
Yeah,
was fancy for me. And I
got
said,
sweatpants here too.
right, right. I'm so demure, so mindful. And I show up, and the woman who's heading this up goes, I walk around the corner and I go back to get the punch bowls ready. And she's like, oh. And she kind of gives me the once up and down. And I'm like, oh God. And my friend standing next to me, she's like, oh. And I was like, oh, it was two O's in a row. She's like,
Yeah.
well, what? And she like didn't know what to say. She's like, did you get the email on wardrobe? And I was like, for parents? No, I got it for my sixth grader, and he
Yeah.
looks great and dapper. She's like, well, unfortunately, this is not going to work. And I was like, I was right back to that 21-year-old who was being scolded by
Oh
an
my
adult. I
gosh.
mean, the sweat is pouring. My girlfriend is cracking up in the corner.
Yeah.
She's like, I'm going to actually have to send you home to change. And I was like, what? She's like, you can't volunteer. I was like, and I was like, I'm not showing up in an American flag string bikini. I'm in a classic, short
You're
set.
in like a Ralph Lauren catalog.
Yes, I was like, I'm doing Northern chic here. No, she was like, I'm so sorry. She's like, you're going to have to go home and put a dress on. She's like, did I not email this? And I was like, technically you didn't, but I was like, I'm so sorry. I must have
This is
missed
when you
that.
want to go like this to them. Like,
I know, but
that's what your inside voice is doing.
it is. But the 43-year-old Sonny versus the 21, I was
Yeah.
like, you know what? I signed up for this, and it's on these are the rules. I
Mhm.
obviously missed the email. And to be fair, there was nothing about shorts or pants. You can't even wear pants. You could wear pants in the email. So they didn't really say, but I was like, you know what? I'm going to just I'm going to woosah,
Yeah.
take a deep breath, and I'm just going to go home and change and come back for my kid. And I came back, and it was like, no short skirts, no short dress. It was a whole thing. I went to my closet. I was like, I got nothing. I found one dress I could wear. I came back. My friend was cracking up, and I was like, there was an older version of me that would have put up a fight, but now
Right.
it's kind of true. I literally signed up for this and I got to
Mhm.
follow the rules. So I did. I went home and I got a dress on and she goes, you look lovely. And it's so Southern. And I was like, I wouldn't have changed for anyone else but you. And she laughed. But I mean, it's the
Well, at least she
perfect.
didn't say bless your heart.
There you go. That's true. Oh, that's the ultimate cut, right? In the
That is,
South.
I mean, so I was working for a healthcare tech company in Nashville, and I was flying there a lot from Seattle. And first day, someone told me, someone says bless your heart, you're in trouble. And I was
Yeah.
like, all right, good to know. And sure enough, I'm in a meeting, and it was like all guys and me, and I was like being me and being very direct. And someone's like, bless your heart. And I'm like, oh, would you say that to
Mm.
your mother? And then it was just like, but
Oh
that was just kind
no.
of the stuff that, when you're talking about the misogyny, there were different rules for
Right.
different people. And even back in my Wall Street days, so I grew up on Long Island, and I could say walk the dog and go get a cup of coffee as good as anybody. And I was told by this one gentleman at Morgan Stanley, he's like, well, your accent may cause you a problem. Now, meanwhile, this guy had a super duper accent as well. But for the guys, it wasn't a problem. But for women, it wasn't ladylike to have that kind of a New York accent. And it just was like, just stuff like that. And then in tech
Yeah.
later on, I worked with a bunch of men who I called the I voted for Hillary guys. And
Hmm.
they talked about the fact that they were for women and they were fathers of daughters. And so of course they supported women in the workplace, and they weren't sexist, and they didn't have these hangups. And yet
Hmm.
they did everything because I voted for Hillary. That was their thing. And
Hmm.
they did exactly the opposite in terms of undercutting women. And then even you had people mostly in HR who are women who are just like, yeah, well, so and so said this. And I'm like, yeah, but this is the behavior that was happening like throughout the team. And it's like, yeah, but you
Hmm.
were the only one who was called out. And I said, well, yeah, that's because they all go drinking together.
Right.
Right. And so I
What
don't
was
know.
the response from that? What did she say from that?
And she's like, well, that's not really relevant because that's outside of work. And I said, oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Sure.
And that's the kind of stuff that it does need to be
Yeah.
there does need to be a challenge to the old, what is it, the boys club, the old
Yeah.
school way of doing things sometimes, and like that's not okay, right? It's just, I don't know, sometimes you're in the middle of stuff and you're like, maybe I should have reacted, maybe I should have taken a stand, but I didn't, I just walked
Yeah.
away tail tucked.
And that's why I left corporate. I was just
uh,
done. I was
yeah.
burnt out. And I started this business first with fitness, but really what it's evolved into is being a burnout coach,
Yeah.
right? Helping
Yeah.
people with accountability in terms of really it's about time management. That's what it
Right.
comes down to is you can withstand burnout and get yourself out of burnout if you understand how time management works.
Hmm. Hmm.
And it's not about like you could sit there and looking at the symptoms of like, I need to eat better, I need to do
Right.
this, I need to do this. But ultimately, it comes down to time management and ruthless prioritization. And
I
that's
like that.
really where the accountability texting comes in, is that most people, if they're not already taking care of themselves, the last thing they need is another commitment on their calendar. That is
Yeah.
just like the last thing that people need, even if they have the money. They
Right.
don't, no one has the time. You're a mom of 3 kids. You work for yourself. How much free time do you have? Probably not a lot.
Yeah, not much.
Right? So the thing is that if you're looking to behavior change, the last thing you need is another half hour, 45-minute meeting on your calendar to
Right.
talk about all the things that you need to change. And so this idea of, well, what if I just texted you personal things around what you need to work on so that this way you can make the time to set the boundaries that you need to set so you're not totally triggered by whatever you're
Hmm.
dealing with at work. Like a lot of women are really upset about a lot of the RTO stuff. Here in Seattle, particularly with Amazon, who's, a major employer, or stuff with your family, because right now you're in this thing called the sandwich generation. You're
Yeah.
parenting your parents and you're parenting your kids, and we'll
Yeah.
throw your in-laws in the parents thing.
Right.
Yeah. And you're also dealing with your own health stuff. All of a sudden you're over 40 and all of a sudden like, hey, I woke up. Why does
Yeah.
my back hurt?
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
And And so the thing is that you're dealing with high pressure work situations and all of those things. And for a lot of people, they haven't taken care of themselves. They're putting themselves last, and they're putting everybody else first. And then before you know it, they're like, oh wow, moving sucks. I'm tired all the time. And you're
Hmm.
going in perimenopause and all of these things. And it's just like, we need to reestablish how you manage your time.
Yeah.
That's what it's about. And that is really the essence of go long, is like, you're able to go long if you can understand how to build
Hmm.
those boundaries, ruthlessly prioritize, and establish like how to do it. And it's hard because I've done it. Like, so I hate talking about pounds, but we'll talk about it. So I'm 5 foot on a good day. If my hair's sticking up, I'm 5'1". My hair defies the laws of physics. But the
You
thing
have
is,
great hair.
I used to be 20 pounds heavier on this size body. And now my VO2 max is the equivalent of like a 21-year-old female. That happened. And so, but the thing is that it's really a focus of, how did I build the habits to do it? And I think a lot of times when you're doing the habit change, and I'm sure you have friends who are like, I want to lose weight because of my son's bar mitzvah,
Hmm.
or, whatever it is. And a lot of it needs to be, that's the extrinsic motivation. But at some point, that motivation needs to become intrinsic. It can't just be about fitting into
Hmm.
the dress and looking hot. It has to
Hmm.
be about, I deserve better. And I'm getting up at 5:30 in the morning to exercise, even though I hate it, because I know I want to move better as I get older. I think that it's really about, how do I cross that chasm from extrinsic to intrinsic, so that when I'm getting up at 5:30 in the morning, I'm
Hmm.
doing it because I want to move better later in life.
Hmm.
And I want to be able to travel, because you're going to Italy with your group, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But Rome is not ADA friendly. Even if you're on a tour bus, there's no escalators taking you places. There's no elevators. You're walking on cobblestone streets. And everybody wants to go to Rome when they retire. Everybody wants to. And so the thing is that, how is it that you want to move, and how do we, like, down the road, and then let's work back and give you a plan of
Hmm.
how you can create the times now so that you can move well for years to come, right? But let's talk a little bit about this, like, trip you have and how it ties into your whole like lifestyle brand that you've been building, because you've done this great pivot from, traditional journalism to now digital. I don't want to call you an influencer, because I feel like that kind of,
That's okay.
it's
It's a little bit of both,
a little
maybe.
bit like the fashion side. But I guess, why don't you describe and kind of what you're a little bit more of what you're trying to do on the, like, the
Yeah.
lifestyle side. Because we
Oh my
talked
God. First of
about,
all, Jill, you should come on this trip. It's still booking. I'm leaving it open for a while because we're trying to see how many, we're toying with the idea of 12 or 16. Anyway, you should come.
I'm going to Italy in like 2 weeks from today.
We can go back again.
I'm going to
Come on.
northern Italy. So,
Come to southeastern Italy with me. Anyway, it's going to be really
and,
fun.
and I think what also I think is good is how it ties in with a recent podcast episode you did about the importance of female friendships, because
Yes.
this is a girls trip. So maybe we could tie that together.
Yes. Okay. So let me tell you a little bit about the trip. I said before, my heritage is, I'm like 96% Italian. And, thanks to 23andMe, my parents were like, you're 100%. I was like, no way. Well, pretty much. So, we've always been very, very tied into our culture growing up, traditions and recipes. I mean, just everything, language, everything. So it's always been a part of my identity. But as I got older, I decided to pursue citizenship there. So anyway, point being, it's a huge part of my life. And I hold dear a lot of the things that culture has brought to me and my family. So I started the citizenship thing, and I, been there a couple of times, and I did not have the ability to go younger. It's an expensive trip, but as an adult, I was able to go a couple of times. And I thought, I'm getting my citizenship there. I'm getting my children's citizenship there, so they'll be connected. How cool would it be to bring buddies, to bring people into this space, women together, connecting with not only this gorgeous landscape and the history of this. And we're going to Puglia, so I'll tell you a little bit more about the itinerary in a second, but also to go with people that not only that you want to connect with, like we call it the ultimate girls trip, because it's a double occupancy. You're going to bring your bestie, you're going to get away. It's
Mhm.
about you connecting with yourself, your best friend, and being in the company of women who are also at the stage of life where they recognize why you have to do that, right? These are women, we've lived a little, we've done, we've had a bunch of the stories that you and I have
Yeah.
talked about, and recognize the need for reconnection with ourselves and with like-minded women. And I have grown the most in my life through my friendships with women. This deep love I have for my friends has lifted me in times that no other person could. And so I want to give women the chance to get away for a week and experience a gorgeous country with some of their amazing friends, and give them time to eat well, to restore. It's such a fun itinerary, and I'll send you the link so you can put it in show notes. But basically, it's a week in Puglia. We have 4 nights at this first hotel that's a renovated 17th century farm. It's set amongst acres and acres of olive groves and citrus trees and everything. And we're doing, a little champagne welcome when you arrive. The next day, we have a hike through the olive groves and a sound bath. So after that arrival and your jet lag, we're going to restore together amongst the gorgeous olive groves. We have a Fiat 500 culinary experience. We're going to get in a vintage
That
Fiat
that
and
that
drive.
looked amazing. I was like,
Jill, you gotta come. This is the woman I designed it for, is the woman who's been through life a little bit and needs a moment. Anyway, all this kind of fun stuff. Vineyard tour and tasting, private shopping experience in Lecce, a day at the sea. It's going to be a little chilly to swim because it's April. It's April 3rd through 9th of 2025. There's an itinerary set, and it's
mhm,
as detailed as it needs to be, but I'm saying do it all, do none of it, do one of it, do 10 of it, whatever you want. It's open. But the feel of this trip, oh, we're doing a dinner under the stars, we're bringing in an astrologer because I'm like woo woo like that, and have your birth chart read. I mean, like, we're going to have moments to connect with yourself, who you are, and your buddies and the land around you, and just, take that deep
right.
breath we all need.
No, that's awesome. I mean, I think the thing is that, but you talked about, on your show about the importance of female friendships. And, there's kind of like your ride or die crews. And I have like different ride or die crews for different things. For example, like recently, by the way, belated happy birthday.
Thank
Um,
you.
my friends, they did a conspiracy. They co-conspired with my husband to kidnap me the day after my birthday. And there was like a video I put on Instagram where like the Ring camera ironically caught the whole surprise.
That is so amazing. I love
And
this so much.
right. And but the thing is that these are the people where you're like, yeah, these are the people who I would ride or die for. Like these
Hmm.
three women who did it, they're really important to me. And we're all going through it together.
Hmm.
And I have different ones as well. And I think that these importance of these female friendships is it's something that's very underrated. And like during COVID, I was really like, it was hard because I didn't realize, like, I complied, like, we didn't socialize and everything. And then all of a sudden, it was the summer. And
Mm.
so I had some people over and everyone stayed outside except when they went to the bathroom and they put on the mask and blah, 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 blah. And the next day, I was in like a great mood for like a week after having my friends over during
Hmm.
COVID. And I was like, oh shit. Like, I need to make sure I do this more often because I didn't realize how much I needed my friends. Like, love my husband, and we didn't kill each other during COVID. We were fortunate enough to have a big enough house where our offices were on different floors and everything else. But
Awesome.
I didn't realize how much I needed my friends to just laugh, right?
The
And
best, isn't it?
it's the best when you're just sitting there and you're just laughing at each other. Like, I did something the other day with a friend. We did a girls trip for our birthdays up to Whistler, and she's like, I am so embarrassed because someone cut the line at the border. And if you've ever gone through a border check-in, you know that it's long and you wait
Right.
like an hour, and someone used the Nexus line to cut the line. And I was
Mhm.
like, what the fuck? Like, we were like online for an hour, and I like called the border patrol and I'm like, is there a rule around cutting? And she is like, I am so embarrassed. And I'm like, I don't care. I don't care if you're embarrassed, right? But
Wait, is there a rule though?
they're like, well, it's not a good idea. And I was like, fuck you. You know what I mean? I mean, I didn't say that, but I was like, "Fuck." But
I love
we all
it.
have our Karen moments, right?
Sure,
But
sure,
all
sure.
depends. But she was like, "I am so embarrassed," and I'm like, "I don't care." And but but those are the things that I think make
Hmm.
friendships, right? And that
Yes,
deep and
yes.
meaning. So, but anyway, look, I have so enjoyed this conversation, and we'll put in the show notes the link to the trip and like some of like this what I'll call the sober newsmakers that you follow, and people can choose whether they want to follow them or not. Right to your point, like, look, you make decisions about your life, but
Hmm.
all we could do is give you information. And I think that, a good example is I didn't listen to this episode of yours yet, but the gentleman you had on over the past couple of days about the 48-hour
Yeah.
uh, gut cleanse
Reset. Hmm.
reset. And I don't know if I believe it based on other things, but I'm willing to listen.
Give it a
Yeah,
shot. Yeah.
even if there's one nugget of information in there that's helpful, that like I could be like, oh, I never thought of it like that, then
Hmm.
it's worth my time because I have a form of colitis. So I'm willing to listen to it and
I
see if
think yes, and he does make a distinction. He's like, listen, for people that are dealing with more serious gastric issues, or I mean, like it's not going to be the same. But he does, yeah, give it a listen. His whole thing is like these four verticals of like insulin health, or insulin,
yeah.
cardiovascular. Yeah. Anyway, it's really interesting. Gut and gosh, Sonny. Anyway, he's really it's
No, I
interesting.
mean, but that's the thing. Like you have to be willing to be wrong about your view of the world sometimes.
Yeah.
And
Oh, I love that.
I think that that's the thing that you're trying to convey through your We Gotta Talk podcast is that are you open to your view of the world being wrong sometimes?
Right. Oof. And I have some episodes coming up, Jill, that I'm nervous to hit publish on, but I'm going to do it anyway because I got to live by the creed that I'm preaching. So yes,
Yeah.
keep an eye. Yeah, I'm
We'll link to your
showing people,
podcast as well.
yeah, how to interact civilly. So we'll see how that goes.
All right. Well, this has been a fantastic conversation. I really appreciate your time. And I look forward to continuing the conversation, through whatever medium possible. And we'll go from there.
Thank you so much again for this conversation and this opportunity. You're so fun to talk with, and I'm just really grateful for this. So thank you, and keep doing what the awesome things you're doing too. And I will see you in April in Puglia.
We'll see.
Maybe.
You know what it is? It's my mom's 75th birthday.
Oh, all these care things we do to care for people. Yes,
So
no, I get
I
it.
got to take care of that. But
Catch us in 26.
yeah. Thank you for joining the Go Long Show. What I want to say is that any advice here, in terms of health and medical, this is not anything. This is just advisory. You should always talk to your medical provider before starting anything and getting the clearance that you need. But remember, it's your life. Go the distance. Go long.